I'm drinking out of this mug, but there's water in it. Hi friends, I'm Felicia. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about the best books, my favorite books that I read of 2017. I read 110 books. I'm going to try not to make this video so long. I'll try not to ramble on, but no promises. We'll see. We'll just see what happens. I have kind of split them up into categories, and I'll leave timestamps down below if you're not interested in certain categories, I guess. So the first book is The Cozy Life by Pia Edberg. That was an ebook that I read. It was one of the first books that I read last year, and it's a book about the concept of hygge, which is my favorite thing of life. I did not know that there was a word for my life aesthetic model. So basically hygge is Danish. Is it Danish? Yeah, it's Danish. The Danish concept of cozy togetherness. Filling your surroundings with things that evoke coziness, like candles and blankets and thick socks and reading a book and a cup of tea and like my life, basically. So I read that and it was just like a cute little nonfiction explaining hygge and stuff like that, and I just really enjoyed it, and it was very cheap on Kindle. I think the price might have gone up, or it was on sale when I bought it, but I would recommend reading it or other books on hygge if you can find them, because it's the best thing ever. The next book is The Magnolia Story by Chip and Joanna Gaines. And basically I just love this book because I love Chip and Joanna, and I love Fixer Upper, which is their show on HGTV. They're just the best. And so this is them basically going through just kind of like them meeting and then their early marriage and like what kind of events in their life brought them to getting their deal for the TV show, things that they've learned. And I just found it really inspiring because they work so hard. Like even when they first got married, they had like hardly anything, and they just worked so hard, and there were things in their life that happened that like didn't go according to plan, but they recovered. And like I found it really inspiring just to just work hard and go after your dreams. I just thought that was awesome. Plus, they were just great. And I listened to the audiobook, which is mostly narrated by Joanna, and then Chip has little things that he'll insert here and there. So it was good. The next book is None Like Him by Jen Wilkin. And this is a Christian nonfiction. Basically, she's talking about the subtitle for the book is 10 Ways That God is Different from Us and Why That's a Good Thing. And this was a book that it really just touched my heart. I read it totally at the right time. And she just talks about ways that God is different from us. And it just totally opened my heart up to just like worshiping God in a new way. Like it just totally made me want to, I don't know. I don't even know what I'm saying. Like it just made me want to just worship God in a new way. I don't know. Like it reminded me of things that I knew about God, but like sometimes you forget and you get complacent. And then she comes back to these things. And the thing that I also loved so much about the book was that everything was rooted. It came back to scripture. Like it was so full of scripture. So I just absolutely loved it. I highly recommend that book to any Christian person that just needs to read a book about God. Like totally. The next book that I read was Still Waiting by Anne Swindle. It's kind of hard to classify this book. It's nonfiction. It's Christian nonfiction, and it's kind of going through the story of the bleeding woman in the New Testament, was speculating what her life might have been like. And she goes through that story, and basically the book is about what to do when you're waiting for God to answer your prayers. So like this bleeding woman, she bled for years and years and years, like most of her life, and prayed for healing, and like she never got healed from it. And we, in our own lives, we go through things for years and years and years. It feels like forever when we're waiting for God to answer our prayers, say yes to our prayers, and he's not. He's waiting, or maybe he said no. She's just kind of going through that, and she had her own health struggle that she was going through, so she kind of tied that in as well. Again, this was a book I read at the exact right time. It just totally touched me, and I took so much out of it. And like I want to read it again because it just was so good. But yeah, like if you're someone that's waiting for something to happen in your life and you're just waiting and waiting, you need some encouragement, I would recommend this book. Okay, so that was it for my nonfiction. Now moving on to graphic novels. There's one graphic novel. If you know me, you might be able to guess what book it is. Fires and Nerve Volume 1. I just absolutely love this. I love the Lunar Chronicles, as you know. I'm a little bit obsessed, and I just love the series. And so this graphic novel, I love the art, I love the humor, I love being back with my peoples, my little children. So like this is kind of the art style. It's just like this monochromatic bluish tones, which I really like. Blue and gray and black. I really like it. And yeah, I can't wait for volume 2 to come out yet this year. And then we're done with my babies, which is sad, but I'll be okay. Next category is classics. So the first one is Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. And yes, I had never read Little Women before, and I loved it. It just gives me all the cozy feelings like Anne of Green Gables does. Anne of Green Gables. I missed the S, didn't I, the first time I said that? Anyways, I just absolutely loved this. I thought it was just so heartwarming, and I love these collections of like stories, just like kind of everyday life, not necessarily like an overarching plot that ties everything together. I just found it so delightful. It was so good. And the next classic is Far From the Madding Crowd by Thomas Hardy. This was another book. I had not read Thomas Hardy before. I read this with my book club in real life. Like I was kind of just like surprised at how much I liked it. Like I got so into it. Yeah, and I didn't love the main character, Bathsheba Everdeen. She's kind of whatever, I can do without her. But like it just, the characters that he wrote and the progression that they go through and the growth, I thought that was fantastic. He's been amazing at writing landscape descriptions and like setting the scene. Like I loved that. I felt like I was there. So I thought this book was so good, and I really want to read more Thomas Hardy at some point. My next category I'm calling speculative fiction, because they're not really contemporary, but they're not sci-fi, so I'm just calling them speculative fiction and lumping them all in there. So the first one is Elemental P by Mark Dunn. This book is one of the most clever books that I have ever read. Basically, this is a story, it's an epistolary novel. That word is so hard to say. An epistolary novel written in the format of letters. And it's this set on this island where the sentence, the quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. Jumps, present tense. Anyways, so the island, it was named after the guy that wrote that sentence. Anyways, whoa, totally sidetracked there. So the way this is written, like it's written by people that love words, the letters, and so it's very rich writing. But the premise of the story is that there's a statue in the city plaza, whatever, that has that phrase, and all of a sudden one day one of the letters falls off, and the city council, they decide that this is a sign from the almighty Nollop that we need to stop using this letter in our speech and writing. And as the book goes on, more and more tiles are falling off, and they're being forced to stop using those letters. And because it's written, the book is an epistolary book, the author stops using them as he's writing the book. And it was just so clever, so good, and the themes in this book were just like, they kind of blew my mind a little bit. Like I was so impressed with this book. It just was so good. Like, you need to read it. It's so good. Like, it's weird, but it's really good. It goes into like more serious themes that you would think by my description of it, but it was also fun and light, but also like had serious themes. Like it was so good. So you need to read this book. Then the next one is Good Morning Midnight by Lily Brooks Dalton. And this was a book that I read because it gave me Station 11 vibes, and it did give me Station 11 vibes when I actually read it. So that was such a relief, because I read so many books that I'm like, this needs to be like Station 11, and it's such a letdown. And I talk about some of those in my worst books, or least favorite books of 2017. But this one was a favorite. I absolutely loved it. I read this. This was the book I read in one day for Booktube-a-thon in the summertime. And I was just, Okay, so basically this book follows two characters. August. Is that his name? August? Yeah. Augustine. August. Gus. Whatever. And Sully. Anyways, those are the two characters that it follows. Augustine, he's in a research station up north, past the Arctic Circle. And Sully is part of a space mission that's coming back from Jupiter. And so there's something that has happened on Earth, and we're not sure what. Both of them, they're very isolated and they lose contact with the outside world. And so it's just a fascinating kind of glimpse of the human psyche and like isolation, and I don't know, and just the setting. It was just so good. The writing was so beautiful, and like this was sparse writing that was good for me, which is also something that I talk about in the other video. But yeah, it was just really good. If you like Station 11, you'll probably like this. It's not like the same kind of story, but very similar themes and feeling like it worked. The next speculative fiction was The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. And like this wasn't a book that like I loved, like it's one of my all-time favorite books, but like it has stuck with me. I read that in early fall, and like I still think about it quite a bit, and just like the themes explored. I listened to it on audio because audible.ca launched this summer and they were giving that book away for free. So yeah, and I fulfilled my goal of finally reading a Margaret Atwood book, and it was narrated by Claire Danes, and she did a phenomenal job. Getting tongue-tied. Yeah, she was a wonderful narrator. I thought she did a great job, and yeah, just the themes explored in that book like were so thought-provoking. Like I still think about it sometimes. Yeah, just the writing. I would imagine that the writing's not for everyone, but just the story being told, and I think the writing worked for that. I was impressed and I enjoyed it. My experience of reading it, not that it's a book to enjoy reading, because it's not a good story. Like not a happy story, but you know what I mean, right? Yeah, that's a book that is gonna stick with me, and I would like to read more Margaret Atwood. I think she's an amazing writer, so at least from that book, she's pretty good. So there's gonna be more of that in the future. Now I am going to move into SFF, science fiction and fantasy. The first book in this category is The Golem and the Genie by Helene Becker, and that book just totally blew me away in terms of its uniqueness. I listened to it on audio, first of all, and the audiobook narrator, oh, I forgot his name, George something. He was, first of all, fantastic. And then it's a story about a Jewish golem and a Syrian genie living in early 1900s, late 1800s New York. It just was, first of all, fascinating because it's set in New York, but the communities are not Western and they're not European myths. It's like a Jewish myth and a Syrian myth. Like they're very, very different cultures from mine. The story is focusing on the Jewish community and the Syrian community in New York. And so there's like almost I think there's one or two white people in the book, which I thought was really cool. Actually, I really liked it. And just like learning about that mythology from different cultures, like it was mythological creatures, it was very fascinating. So if you like fantasy, I would recommend it. Like it was written very well. I really enjoyed it. And there's supposed to be a second book coming out this year, so that's interesting. I'll be looking out for that one. The next book that I want to talk about is The Girl of Ink and Stars by Kieran Millwood Hargrave. I was going to say Karen. That's not right. This is a book that I buddy read with Angela from Coffee and Chapters, and we both really enjoyed it. This is the UK edition. In the US, it's published as The Cartographer's Daughter, but The Girl of Ink and Stars sounds so much prettier. And this is a middle grade book, and it's about a girl whose father is a cartographer. They're living on this island. The middle of the island has never been charted on a map. They're not allowed to go and explore that area, but then her best friend goes missing in there, and so she's determined that she's going to go find her, and she's going to chart it along the way. And so that's kind of where the story starts. I thought this was a brilliantly written middle grade book. It was so entertaining. The fantasy aspect was really interesting. And I just really enjoyed this book. So if you like fantasy, if you like middle grade, I would recommend this one. And I looked over there like way early. Why do I do that? The next one that I want to talk about is the Jane Austen Project by Kathleen A. Flynn. And I got this book for my birthday and I started reading it on my birthday. So that's pretty good, right? And this is basically, I could have lumped this in with maybe speculative too, but it's also sci-fi. Because it has to do with time travel, and basically in the future when resources have dwindled and everything, they've also discovered how time travel works and they can do it. The main character is sent back with a partner to Jane Austen's time, and they're sent to steal Jane Austen's unfinished manuscript. Doesn't say. But yeah, so they're sent back to Jane Austen's time, and they're sent to befriend her and try to get documents and stuff from her, letters and unfinished manuscripts. I just found that so entertaining. Yeah, I don't know how to classify this. It's like sci-fi, but historical fiction, but like speculative. Like, it's really interesting. And there were things that I didn't care for in this book. For the most part, I really enjoyed it, and just like the thought process of like going back in time and meeting Jane Austen, and they're like not supposed to change anything, so like how do you become friends with her and not change anything, and like where that line is. So it's very interesting. And if you like Jane Austen, like, it doesn't feel like a Jane Austen book, but I think it's written really well, so I would recommend it if you like Jane Austen. The next science fiction book is A Wrinkle in Time by Madeleine L'Engle. I'd never read it before in my life, which is kind of shocking to me because it's Christian sci-fi, so that was super cool for me when I read that. Like, I knew Madeleine L'Engle was a Christian, but I didn't realize like that there were themes like that throughout A Wrinkle in Time. So that was just fantastic for me. And I just was so pulled into the story, and I just really enjoyed, I listened to it on audio. The narrator, I don't know if the narrator added anything to my reading experience, but like, I just found the story so much fun, and just like the different sci-fi things and the people that the main characters come across, like just like that whole adventure and like kind of like a quest, journey adventure thingy. I don't know what it's classified as, but yeah, like I just really liked it. I'm just like not even making, I'm saying the same things about all of the books now. And I'm like super stoked for the movie now, the Disney movie coming out soon. And like the casting is like A+. So I am just really excited to see that movie. Okay, and then the last one in my SFF category is The Healer's Apprentice by Melanie Dickerson. This was the kind of book that I wanted to read when I was a teenager. This was a Sleeping Beauty retelling set in like medieval Germany. It's such a good retelling. Like, I just thought the story was so good, the writing was so good, the characters were good, the love interest was so swoony, like he was so cute. So like, I just enjoyed all of it. And the retelling aspect, like, it was subtle. Like, it didn't bash you over the head, and you didn't figure everything out right away. But then, like, if you're familiar with the story, then you could follow along. Yeah, I just thought it was really good. And like, that was just totally what I wanted to read when I was a teenager. And like, where was Melanie Dickerson when I was 18? Come on. So my last category is historical / contemporary fiction. Fiction, basically. So the first book there is The Chilbury Ladies Choir by Jennifer Ryan. It's a book set in World War II, and it's set in this village where all the men have gone off to war, and the pastor of the church, he's saying that the choir is going to have to be disbanded, but then they fight for just having a ladies choir, and so it kind of follows the women in the ladies choir. This is also written as an epistolary book. I'm a fan of that style. As someone that enjoys writing letters, I just really like that style. But yeah, it follows these different women in the town and their lives and how they intersect. You know how I feel about World War II books. I just really like them. So I really enjoy that aspect. But there was like something that happened in this book that was so bad. And like, I was shocked I did not think the book was gonna go there, and it's just like, how can I like this? But like overall the book was so good, but like just this one plot point was just like, how is this happening? This is so bad. I'm like, I don't want to give it away. Like, it's bad, but it's like bizarre bad. But anyways, if you read it, you'll know what I mean. Anyways, I liked it because, yeah, I write letters. I'm in a choir. Like, it just, in World War II, it was written for me. Like, I just enjoyed it so much. And the next one, this one's kind of historical. It's set in the 60s, 70s? I forgot now. But that is The Smell of Other People's Houses by Bonnie Sue Hitchcock. And this is YA, and it follows 4 different characters living in Alaska, which is fantastic. And I have never read a book set in Alaska before, I don't think, unless some of the wilderness books that I have read are set in Alaska. Anyways, so again, this was a book where the writing was so lovely, the characters were well developed. I found it really fascinating because I've never been to Alaska, so I learned a little bit about Alaska in here. One thing that I liked was, often when a book has a title like this, The Smell of Other People's Houses, so then in the beginning of the book, you know, they usually start off with something that ties the title into the book. So like in the beginning of the book, she's describing the smell of her friend's cabin, but then often they just drop that off, that kind of theme or device. They just drop it halfway through the book, but she actually like often would describe smells throughout this book. So I thought, first of all, that was good that she just like kept it going the whole book. So that was something I was impressed with. And then this is one of those books where the characters start off all separate, and then throughout the book their lives become intertwined. I love books like that. So this one did it well. And like, look at this cover. Oh my goodness, I love it. So yeah, loved it. And I listened to it on audio first, and the audiobook was so good. It had different narrators for each character, and then I had to buy it because I just enjoyed it so much. Next book is Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds, and that is a new release. I got it as an ARC, but then my ARC was messed up, and like the PDF was messed up, and like not all of the pages were there. Like, it was very weird. So I actually listened to it as an audiobook when that came out. Amazing audiobook. Like, I would highly recommend it on audio. The book is structured as in verse. It's written in verse, and I think that structure was so effective for the story that he was telling. But the audiobook was just amazing. Narrated by Jason Reynolds, and it just it was so good. So this is a book told through the perspective of Will, whose brother has been shot and killed. And so in his circle, you take revenge. When someone you love gets killed, then you go kill the person that killed them. And so he's gonna go get revenge on the person that killed his brother. And the story is told basically in a minute in the elevator on his ride down. And he is visited by different people. Each floor of the elevator stops and someone new gets on, someone that has a connection to him and his brother and this whole story. And oh, it's just so good. It's so good. So it has very heavy themes, obviously, like, you know, people being killed and murder and stuff like that. So, but like, it was so good, and it opened up my eyes to situations that I know of, but I don't, it's so out of my realm of my life that it's just, like, I don't think about it. And so this book led me to actually, you know, consider a lot of things and I felt so much empathy and compassion for these people. And at the end of the audiobook, there's actually a short interview with Jason Reynolds, and he actually talks about that, like, his goal when he writes his books is that people will learn compassion. And, like, I think he totally nailed it with this book. Like, oh, just, if you want to read something amazing, like, read this. will blow your mind. And like the audiobook is like an hour and a half, so it's short. You can do it. And I think like the book is like 250 pages in verse, so you'll fly through it. Okay. And this is the last book that I want to talk about. That I read in 2017, and that is Final Cafe Unplugged by Stuart McLean. Very different from the last book I just talked about. So this is the third book in his Final Cafe series. It features short stories that follow David Morley, his characters in his Final Cafe world. You know, it just features just delightful slice of life stories that follow his characters, and I just absolutely love it. It's so Canadian. It's so heartwarming, and it just makes me smile when I read these books, because I just love these characters so much. Like, they feel like friends. They feel like people that I know. And so I just absolutely love it. And Stuart McLean passed away last year, and so I just felt like celebrity deaths don't often affect me. Like, I feel sad that they passed away, but I'm not like, I don't feel anything, but like, when I heard that Stuart McLean passed away, I was sad. Like, I felt sad. He's a Canadian icon, so I'll miss him a bit, which is a weird thing to say, because I never met him, but I'll kind of miss him. Just that he's, you know, alive in the world. Anyways. So I still have quite a few more of these books to read, and I will definitely treasure them, especially knowing that there's no more coming. So, yeah, I just really... These books are just a joy for me, so I had to include it on my list. So those are the 20 books that I enjoyed the most this year, or that stuck with me, that made an impact, that I thought were amazing. If you have read any of these books, I would love to know your thoughts, or if I have convinced you to pick up any one of these books, I would love to know that as well. Or just any general thoughts that you have. You can leave them down below as long as they're positive. And I thank you very much for watching this very long video. And until next time, so long, and thanks for all the fish.